Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at some of the best performing investments that are sealed from the Scarlet Violet era, and we're also going to be comparing it to some of the Sword and Shield booster boxes and ETBs in the same time period, essentially, or a little bit less depending on sets. And before we get into this and I break it all down, set the stage, we do have one news article courtesy of pokeybeach.com. The Prismatic Evolutions premium figure collection is going to feature Umbreon EX and Espeon EX. We do not know if these are just going to be the regular EXs from Prismatic Evolutions or if they're going to get alternate art reprints. Once we know more, I'll update you guys, and I'm sure PokeBeach will. If you guys follow them, they'll put something out, obviously. So I'm hoping that we get alternate art reprints. That would be amazing. And I'm assuming that the premium figure is either going to be Umbreon or there's going to be one of Umbreon and one of Espeon. Either way, this is going to be another solid investment for Prismatic, and I believe this doesn't come out yet. September 26th is when it's going to release, so long ways away. I'm sure we'll know more in the coming months. Now, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be looking at all of the releases in SV era up to Surging Sparks. We're not going to look at Prismatic Evolutions, and the reason for this is we're going to be basing off annualized ROI. And when you have a really new release, even if it's up a little bit, it really kind of skews the data. For example, if you look at Surging Sparks right now, it's got a current annualized ROI of 2,391.54%. So not really a great number to look at. Most of the other data is fairly accurate, especially the older Sword and Shield stuff that we'll look at as well. But we are going to look at annualized ROI. So basically, there's a calculator online you can use. There's tons of them. You put in an amount invested. So for us, that would be 70% of MSRP. And again, people are going to get upset I use 70% of MSRP. A lot of these booster boxes you could buy cheaper than that. I understand it. Even up to Surging Sparks, you probably bought it cheaper than 113. I know I did. But I figured it was a decent price to start at. Some people might say at $35 for a 151 or Paldea and Fate CTB is too cheap, and you probably should put $40. So it kind of balances out. It's not super important. You change your inputs, you're gonna get different outputs. But for our purposes and what we're looking at, it's fairly close to what I think is a reasonable expectation on return. So, yeah. Anyways, we would put in 70% of MSRP. We'd put in current market price as our return investment. Obviously, you got to set the start date for the day of release of each set. I went through and did that all. Again, if you want to go back and check all of this data manually, double check my work, go for it. But just take my word for it. And then I set today's current date, February 3rd, 2025. So that's what we put in there. So starting off, SV base, 70% of MSRP for a booster box is $113.15. Current price is $143.63. I'm not going to go through every single number on screen because you guys can see we're looking at an annualized ROI of 13.67%. Kind of expected for this to be the lowest just because it's a base set. Again, not super popular. It's whatever. If you put in $80 or $90 here, which a lot of people probably bought at, even more recently, like into last year, like maybe June, July, something like that, you'd get a much different number, right? But again, for the purpose of this video, there you go. Paldea Evolved, $113 at release, current value almost $200, around a 40% annualized ROI. Obsidian Flames, same starting price, around 176, 35% ROI. Again, it makes sense. Obsidian Flames is lower than Paldea, right? So once we start ranking things, and again, we did this with top 3, top 5, and top 10 values. It made sense Paldea Evolved was going to be above stuff like Obsidian Flames, like SV Base. So we're already starting to see that things are falling into place even when you look at it from a different perspective. Next up, Pokemon 151, just a regular ETB for this, $35 starting price, MSRP is $50, right? So 70%. Current value $171.87. An ETB of Pokemon 151 is almost as expensive as a booster box of Obsidian Flames. 220.29% annualized ROI. This is the best performing sealed investment from the SV era, without a doubt. Like, there's no question in it so far. Maybe you could argue like the PC ones or whatever, right? But I'm just saying 151 when we look at sets, and maybe there's some obscure, release of some smaller product, right? But when we look at main set releases, this one is just absolutely crushing it. It does seem like it's starting to plateau around that 170 price point, but 151 had an insane run over the past year from around $50 up to that 170 range. So just insane. Paradox Rift 113, now around 150-ish, 24.94% return. Paldean Fates ETBs up to around $97, 96.53. That's 170% approximately return. Another really solid set, right? Like we can't get mad at Paldean Fates. The Mew EX is pushing $400 at this point. You have the Charizard up there as well. The Gardevoir is like close to or maybe even over $100 at this point. So very, very solid set. I don't think a lot of people saw this one doing that well, but it is. Temporal Forces, 162.17 currently, a 51.15% annualized ROI. Twilight Masquerade now sitting around 185.80, over 100%, 103.38% annualized ROI. And I should point something out here too. When you use annualized ROI in the short term, it can definitely skew the data. So when we are looking at some of these sets, right, like Twilight, Shrouded up next. Like when you look at Shrouded, it's got a 77.29% annualized ROI. Really, in practice, you're not getting anywhere near that because fees and shipping and all that jazz, right? It's going to cut into that. It's also a very new set release. When we look at Shrouded Fable, in a year or 2 years from now on the channel, it's going to be much lower than this, right? It's probably going to be in that 20% range, maybe even less, maybe a little more, right? But you're not going to get anything close to 77%. I'm not saying you should go buy Shrouded Fable right now, but Twilight Masquerade, it is one of the best performing sets, I guess you could say. And in terms of booster boxes, it's really only behind Stellar Crown and Surging Sparks right now. Stellar Crown, 166.56% annualized ROI, sitting around $166, $167 currently. And then Surging Sparks, 243.51 current price. That's a 2,391.54% annualized ROI again. So once you get closer to the current day, the very recent releases, the data does get skewed a lot. When you look at older stuff like Sword and Shield era, it's much closer. But when we look at Surging Sparks in a year, over here, some of these cards, this set is going to perform much better than something like Stellar Crown. I imagine when we look at data like this in a year or two, just based on the set value of Surging Sparks and stuff, it's probably going to perform something closer to maybe a Chilling Reign or a Lost Origin down here, somewhere between that 58 and 85% annualized ROI. When we look at these boxes in a couple of years, depending on what happens with reprints and stuff, right? But I don't think it's going to perform as poorly as something like Temporal Forces, for example. I don't think it's going to perform as well as something like Evolving Skies, which is over 100% annualized ROI. So in the same time period, right, or even a bit less because some of these releases were very recent, but since March 31st, 2023, all of these sets, I took their prices on that date, and looking at current prices, a lot of these sets are still doing well, right? So Battle Styles, even that's almost 25%. Chilling Reign, 58. Evolving Skies, obviously the big boy, 103.88% annualized ROI. Celebrations, a regular ETB's up 30, almost 31%. Fusion Strike, 97.6%. Brilliant Stars, almost 37. Astral, 47. Pokemon Go, 27. Lost Origin 83.87, and then Silver Tempest 31, Crown Zenith around 42, 41, 42. And you do have to remember March 31st, 2023, Silver Tempest and Crown Zenith were still recent releases, so it doesn't surprise me that their annualized ROI is maybe a bit lower than something like a Lost Origin, for example, or even a Brilliant Stars, like Brilliant Stars being slightly higher than Lost or Silver Tempest. It kind of makes sense just because it was a newer release. It was still kind of expensive and the new popular set at that time. So again, there's lots to consider when you look at this data, but for me, when we're looking at stuff like this, obviously Evolving Skies is one of the best sets of all time. It's continued to perform super well. One thing I actually wanted to point out today when I was looking at this data, the Umbreon VMAX, guys, like, is this the new pump and dump here? This was an $1,800 card a week ago, and it's now $1,250 and selling for way less than that. You did have one new sale come in today at the time of recording this video, almost $1,500, but 1,120, same price there, 1,100, 1,100, 1,100. You have Light Blade selling for $800, whereas if we go back in the data, this is gonna do this again to me, guys. Middle of January, I'd say this is where it was definitely popping off. 1,400 consistently, 1,500, crept up to 1,600 there. So it was consistently in that, $1,500, $1,600 range. And really since a couple weeks ago, we've started seeing it sell for a lot less. So the VMAX Moonbreon there, just a card to keep your eye on. But yeah, Evolving Skies has been absolutely crushing it. Fusion Strike, same thing, almost 100% annualized ROI. The Gengar in here, almost $750. The Espeon VMAX over 300, the Mew over 200 again. And Lost Origin, still pretty decent when we look at the data as well. Almost an 84% annualized ROI with the Giratina up top and stuff. And then, on the SV Era side, 151, I already talked about this, the standout set. And it's really impressive that it's performed this well, just considering, the raw numbers of, the top 3, top 5, and top 10 values being nowhere near some of these other sets. So, maybe in the future, I'm going to have to adjust my calculations and how I view things a little bit, just to factor in, what people think, like public perception, having fun opening the set as well. And then obviously the promo card, like the Snorlax people want, it's doing really well, especially compared to like the Mimikyu from Paldea Evolved. It's probably a more, valued. I haven't actually checked the values, but I'm imagining it's probably worth a bit more. It's probably a more, favored card just from people's perception of it, with which one they prefer. So I probably will have to change how I look at things a little bit in the future. But that's kind of the whole point in this video, guys. When we look at this data, there are things that are outperforming, like 151, Twilight Masquerade, Paldea Evolved, or Paldean Fates rather. So a lot of these sets, just keep your eye on them. And this is kind of, I kind of want to do this video just because you guys like data, and it's also another way to look at the top 3, top 5, and top 10 values, because a lot of people really didn't agree with that kind of perspective and how you go about judging how well a set's going to do. But when you look at just the raw returns, right, it doesn't lie. Obviously there are going to be some differences based on when a set was released, but long term, Evolving Skies, when you look at the Sword and Shield data, at least Evolving Skies still number one. Fusion Strike, which is up there, is number 2, is still number 2. And then something like Lost Origin, which I believe was still number 3, right, is still number 3, and it goes down, like Chilean Rain number 4, still in that range as well. So point being, however you look at the data, whatever you want to do, it's probably going to be fairly similar to that same value system. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Let me know in the comments down below in the future, if I look at annualized ROI, if there's anything I should change or you want me to do differently and go more in depth on. I know this was kind of a really, roughly done video in a short period of time. But you guys let me know in the comments if there's anything I can improve on. You guys help me out a lot. So thank you so much for watching the video. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.